You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome, everybody, to the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Michael Leibowitz, and I'm joined here by James Valiant and the wonderful Ian Gilmore. Obviously, I'm not Michael. Michael is having some technical difficulties at the moment, so we're going to have a wonderful chat with James and Ian. Still can't hear you. So, James and Ian, how are both of you today?
I'm quite well. I was sad to hear that you're suffering from a headache today, Persephone.
Terrible headache, terrible day to be having technical difficulties.
Indeed, only adding to our headache. I wonder, if you could nod, Michael, can you hear us? Okay. Do you have your mic there working? Well, I don't know quite what to say, but we had quite a number of stories that Michael sent to us, and all of them really interesting. For example, I don't have my phone here with those stories.
I also just want to make everyone aware that I don't have access to those stories. So,
oh dear. Moment, please. My dear, could you bring me my phone? In a moment, I will have those stories. I fully expected, as usual, to be led along by Michael, who sets the agenda for these sort of things. Where should we? Did you get the stories, Ian?
Maybe I did not.
Oh. Here we have the blind leading the blind. Well. Let's dive in with immigration. There were a couple of Good Reason magazine articles that Michael sent me on the immigration question. One that I found disturbing, but one I think that is disturbing about the law in general, has to do with the fact that apparently attorneys are being turned away from seeing ICE detainees. And, a fundamental part of our system in the United States is that everyone has a right to counsel. That is different, and this has long been the case, that Sixth Amendment rights apply differently to immigration cases. Did you know that? Even though ICE arrests people and detains people and holds them in custody, and normally it takes 1 to 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, before they can even get in front of a judge to have their hearing, or to have even the beginning of the process, the due process that they get. You do not have a right to an attorney in the same way a criminal defendant does, even though you're very much still in custody. You have a statutory right to hire your own attorney, in effect. And that's it. They don't have to provide you with a government-provided attorney if you can't afford one. Everyone's familiar with the famous Miranda injunction. You have a right to an attorney, and if you can't afford one will be provided for you. That has not been the law for decades now when it comes to immigration cases. Immigration cases, using the excuse that they're really not criminal proceedings, even though people are sitting in custody in detention facilities, when it comes to immigration cases, you don't have the same right to an attorney that you do in criminal cases. Nonetheless, you have a statutory right to hire an attorney. And there's been several attorneys who have attempted to gain access to their clients. During normal business hours, the normal procedure in immigration cases is to give access. But of late, they have not been. And days have gone by as immigration detainees are languishing in custody and not getting any kind of a visitation from their attorney. Normally with people in custody, it's in other criminal cases, that's not the case. Ian, what do you think of that?
I mean, I think it's just another indication of one of the main big problems we have, and it turns out it was a hidden problem in the American system, which is what do you do when the executive branch refuses to execute the laws? Right?
Yeah.
You see that in the TikTok case. You see that in what prosecuting or not prosecuting. You see that in this case, and it's not clear how anybody's going to address it. I think it also does get to a point that, I know you guys criticized Harry Binswanger's article, and I think you made a lot of good points. But I think what he was getting at is some of this, that this immigration system is a parallel system where people do not have the same rights. And is that really a good system? Whether it's law or not, or whether it's law enforcement or not, is a different question. But
What's funny is that it doesn't turn on whether a human being is held against their will in a jail, in effect, a jail facility. It doesn't. It turns on the kind of law that this is. In the 18th, we didn't have any immigration laws for the first 100 years of our country's history. It was only in the 1870s that the Supreme Court confronted with the first federal immigration laws, which were absolutely despicable, the Chinese Exclusion Act. Totally racist law, goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, guess what? Every nation in the world has a right to protect its borders, and so obviously Congress can regulate it, even though it is not one of Congress's specified powers in Article 1, Section 8. And having carved out this exception, it creates this extra constitutional sort of body over there of law. And that has resulted in lower standards under the Fourth Amendment for searches and seizures. The normal criminal standards of reasonable suspicion and probable cause actually operate differently when it comes to immigration inspections and immigration cases, which are treated more like administrative searches. Similarly, under the Fifth Amendment, the same due process rights that normal criminal defendants would get don't apply. Or Sixth Amendment cases, you don't have a right to a jury trial, which is quite clearly spelled out. And so you only get a notice hearing in front of a judge. And all of this is done under the excuse that it's really a civil procedure, even though you're sitting in jail. And you could be sitting in jail for weeks or months as this goes on. So having carved out an exception to the Constitution on immigration generally, all of the normal Bill of Rights protections for people who are charged with crimes and held in custody don't apply. Now, it is disturbing that Trump seems to be pushing the envelope, if I can use that metaphor, when it comes to this lack of rights. And frankly, given our now conservative-leaning Supreme Court, I don't expect our conservative Supreme Court to do much about it, at least not in the foreseeable future. But it is an outrageous injustice nonetheless, because there are human beings sitting in jail custody for weeks and months without any sort of actual due process that is normally given when a person is sitting in jail. Trump did not invent that, I would point out, though.
This is longstanding. Sorry to interrupt, but I learned one interesting thing yesterday, which is that people talk about these administrative warrants, and I always thought that those came from these, what they call administrative judges, which are not really court system judges, but they're part of the executive branch. But it turns out those warrants don't even have to come from an administrative judge. Like the ICE officers themselves can write these warrants, sign them themselves, and then they've got a warrant to do whatever they're allowed to do. And now they're asserting they can go into buildings, and search based on those warrants. So it's just like as an officer, I can say, I want to go in this place. I'm going to fill out this form. I'm good to go.
Let me give you an example. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Prior to the 1930s, the Supreme Court routinely struck down labor laws. Really, we lived in a world before the the mid to late 1930s. Economic regulations were routinely struck down by the High Court. That all changed about the time of the New Deal. And so we had to develop a constitutional body of what they call administrative law. And if it's like occupational safety and health, guess what? The OSHA people can come in, investigate your business, and they don't have to follow the same standards that they do with other search warrants. It's absolutely corrupt. And not only that, these administrative agencies are a violation of separation of powers. And so they collapse both judicial or all judicial, even legislative rulemaking authority, as well as executive authority in the power of the regulatory agency. And so the Supreme Court has carved out, it's again about as old as I am. The 1950s is what saw the development of administrative law. They carved out this administrative law exception. And so what happens is OSHA gets to define the rules, which ought to be happening by Congress. OSHA gets to enforce those rules. And when it comes to adjudicating cases, they get to a large extent to adjudicate. Now, it's true it's limited to, in most regulatory cases, the punishment is a fine, or a fine if you don't correct the situation, that sort of thing. People usually aren't going to jail in OSHA cases. It becomes particularly pernicious when you apply that standard to immigration, because guess what? People are getting arrested and they are being held in jail. And so it becomes particularly offensive. But in my view, the entire body of what they call administrative law that's developed since the 1950s, it's older than I am, is a total corruption of the system. It's a violation of separation of powers. It ignores the Bill of Rights, as though economic regulations are somehow different than other forms of government coercion. They ought not to be considered so radically different. And what they're doing is, for example, with the home searches, they're trying to say that, in effect, a deportation order is the equivalent of a criminal arrest warrant. And if the police have a criminal arrest warrant for you, Ian, and they see you running into your home, they can go into your home and arrest you in your home, because they do have a probable cause criminal warrant. But the scope of that search is limited. They can't start rifling through drawers and bureaus and opening, cabinets, because they're there just to arrest you. The scope is limited. And so the current administration, is saying deportation orders have the equivalent effect of a criminal arrest warrant. Again, you see the relaxed standards that immigration has. Again, I can't even predict what the Supreme Court will do, because for decades now, the Supreme Court has not afforded immigration cases the same level of due process that other cases are given. So it would require, in effect, changing constitutional law to change this. So the Supreme Court bears a lot of the fault here. But Trump is, of course, using it all more aggressively than anyone has before him. That is simply a fact.
Yeah, and I think that, let's say we get a Democratic president next time and a Democratic Congress, they might do something like get rid of ICE. But I think you're getting at the main point, which is they're not getting at the real problem. And so this problem could just come up again in some other form, whichever future president wants to do whatever they want, and they will find these loopholes. That is the one superpower of the current Trump administration, is they have people actively looking for all these legal holes, and they're going to drive a truck through them.
Yeah. Part of it is the political context we've lived through. Barack Obama, when he was president, deported millions of people, did internal ICE raids. There were multiple cases when citizens were wrongfully detained and arrested, but there wasn't all the hullabaloo. He even deported non-criminals. He said, it's my policy to deport anyone who's here illegally, whether they've committed some other crime or not. And so people, when they focus on criminals and we're getting the worst of the worst, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama both deported people simply for illegally being in the country, whether they had committed any other crime or been violent at all. Because of Trump, there was a change, Trump 1.0, and they started changing the Democrats started changing their approach to immigration law at all. Biden comes into power, and suddenly, in effect, he turns the other way. Deportations fall by 70%. Millions of people cross the Rio Grande completely unvetted. I don't think that's a good system either. That's lawlessness. And because of this ignoring of the law by Biden, in effect, people got the idea, we can ignore immigration law, in effect. Now, mind you, if the governor of Texas.
Hello?
Michael.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, and you can shut me up from yammering on and on and on.
Yes,
Okay, this is going to
I'm
be
too polite.
because what I did was, am I very, very loud?
No, you're at a
Just
proper
perfect?
voice, at least for me.
Okay, so you guys now sound very quiet to me, and my own voice sounds insane. Let me just try one more thing, and hopefully I can fix everything, and then I'll be good.
What distresses me is the radical change between the law doesn't change, the administration changes, and suddenly the effective law changes so radically, and it affects millions of people. Now, think about that. A new administration, although there's not been a change in a semicolon in the statute.
Hello.
Yeah, there he is.
All right. So what I had to do was for some reason, what's happening is, let me turn my volume down just a bit, and hopefully that'll be cool. I had to turn off the background noise canceller.
Right.
And I don't know why that's working, but they're saying I do sound louder than you guys. But anyway, so welcome, Ian. I haven't heard much of the discussion. Obviously, there's something amiss with the microphone. It's not the microphone itself. It's something that's going on with my computer system.
Well, there's been no disclaimer. There's been no, none of the ordinary introduction here.
Yeah. Okay. The disclaimer's on the screen, so we don't need that. Ian looks wonderful. So once you have Ian, everything's good.
Yes.
We've got some super chats from Robert Naser. Jenna Kleem gave us one. Akira Felix says, I'm fine. Katrin says, I'm doing wonderful. I will now proceed to get this show on the mother loving road. And Persephone, by the way, I tried calling Persephone to help, and she says, email her. The problem, Persephone, with what you wanted me to do was I wanted to see if I would be able to communicate with you on the microphone while you were on your phone.
I don't know if you can tell, but my battery died. I don't have my charger with me.
All right. It sounds like a lot of excuses.
You're the one who had the problem, Mr. Leibowitz. And so
it sounds like Jim is kicking in his chivalry right now.
Well, no. Just a few facts of reality here. You're the one who had the technical glitch, and you're blaming it all on this lovely lady from South Africa. You're the one making the excuses.
Okay, here's the thing. This is what I want to talk about, because I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. I want to know about, did you guys yet talk about the administrative warrants?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly on that issue.
All right. So what I'm going to do then is switch topics altogether to this Jack Smith testimony from yesterday.
Okay. Yeah.
In talking to
Jack Smith was the independent counsel appointed to handle some of the federal cases against Mr. Trump.
Yes. So in reading the nature of the law and talking to, some world-renowned experts on the subject, Jim Valiant, I firmly believe that the two cases brought by Jack Smith were the two legitimate cases. These were the having possession of classified information and the obstruction of agents to be able to get to those materials, and then the trying to slate the false electors. That was part of it. He was not charged, importantly, with inciting the riots. They never charged them with that. So Jack Smith testified yesterday, and of course, it seems that it was just a show. The Republicans are trying to get a gotcha thing. I actually saw somebody on X say, aha, he admits it, because he said he knew it was wrong. He misrepresented facts, and he believed what he wanted to believe. And the person says, aha, you see, he did believe he won, and Jack Smith just admitted it. Which, of course, is BS. So what say you folks about this?
What do you think, Ian?
I actually watched a lot of it live because I was interested, and it is a shame that these congressional hearings are a joke, in that they try to play every game. They'll make a 5-minute speech and then give a yes/no question and say you can just say yes or no, and it's a did you stop by beating your wife type question. So the Republicans were completely ridiculous, and They complain about all these things like getting phone records when it's just records of who called who. It's not like they were listening in on phone calls. And I think Jack Smith did a good job, and I wish those cases had gone to trial, and then we could have some adjudication on the law behind some of the stuff Trump did. I also, one more quick thing. I think it's great that what Jack Smith focused on was not January 6th, because what the issue is what Trump did from the election until January 6th. And that's what should have prevented anybody from voting from him again, in my mind. That no matter what cases you make about him as a political person or what he's going to do for the economy, that stuff was unforgivable. And that's my take on it.
I agree.
Well, how do you guys react to this? I mean, obviously the law is the law, and when someone violates the law, say like the handling of classified documents, I mean, ordinary soldiers in Iraq were thrown in the hoosegow for years for making known classified information. But when it comes to our top political officials, a national security advisor who shoves papers into his pants and to escape, or Hillary Clinton, who destroyed evidence and clearly compromised national security, or Joe Biden, when the independent counsel said, he's kind of just out of it. So even though he had classified, back from when he was a senator, mind you, he had classified documents in his garage, none of the top officials, the big name officials at the top of the pyramid, got charged when the cases against them for mishandling classified documents, it seemed to me, were very strong. Now, on the other hand, Trump gets his home gets in effect invaded. His wife's underwear drawer gets opened, and
yeah, but I mean it is completely different.
Let me just finish this. You can see how people would perceive it as thoroughly partisan in terms of letting Hillary off the hook, say Biden off the hook, but then going after Mr. Trump on the same basis.
I mean, the Hillary stuff I'm not going to address because I don't know enough of the details. But like the Biden stuff, people figured out Joe Biden had documents and they said, "Hey, Joe, give us those back." And he said, "Oh, damn, my bad. Here you go." People figured out Trump had documents and he said, "I don't have any documents." And then he said, "Okay, well, here's these documents. And I'm not going to tell you what else I had. And meanwhile, I'm going to move them around. And if you come looking, I'm going to put them someplace." Like it's a completely different case in the response and what he did.
But Hillary destroyed.
Mike Pence.
Hillary not only lied, but actually physically destroyed evidence.
I don't have enough details on that for myself, but I mean, there were, like, Donald Trump asked Bill Barr to look into the Hillary stuff and charge where he wanted to, and Bill Barr didn't charge anything. Why not? Like, it's not like Bill Barr was Hillary's friend, right? I don't have the details to comment on that. Maybe Hillary should have been charged. I'm fine with that, but Trump should have been charged. It should have come to trial and something should have been done.
I remember an old post I had from way back in 2016 where I actually said, if they don't properly investigate and charge Hillary Clinton, how will they ever have credibility when they charge someone for mishandling documents? I did not anticipate the Trump case one little bit, and I was already concerned that it would be perceived, and this is important, when the public perceives that Lady Justice is no longer blind, but it's happening in a partisan way, that undermines the credibility and people's confidence in the entire Department of Justice, frankly. We're living in a world in which, again, as sort of like we were talking about in immigration, depending on the party in power, the rule of law changes. That is more disturbing to me than anything else, because now people have lost any kind of confidence in objective law. And while that was, in my view, the classified document case against Mr. Trump was by far the strongest, because as you point out, he lied about it. I think we've got enough evidence to say he lied about it, just like I think we have enough evidence to say Hillary Clinton destroyed evidence about it. But you see, people are seeing, it's a double standard. And it's not a you too kind of argument. It's no, the same standards have to apply to everybody. And if they don't, it undermines everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll raise a related one, which is this John Bolton thing, which when it first came out, to me, it sounded like, okay, this is just another political prosecution by Trump. But since then, it's come out that he was actually being investigated by the DOJ under Biden, and he might have actually taken some stuff he shouldn't have had. And then I said, okay, well, let's see the evidence and do the trial. But I want to go back to one other thing you said, and feel free to jump in, Michael, on your show.
Can you hear me though?
Well,
Yes, we can hear you.
Michael.
We can.
Am I real loud?
No, it's
No.
fine.
All right.
So the one thing I would say about something you said is that the corruption of the way it's perceived, and this has happened in a number of areas. And part of the big problem here is that is not just a result of people honestly looking at the different results and seeing things. That is part of a process of people deliberately trying to corrupt the view. And you see it happen with election fraud, you see it happen with vaccines, you see it happen with trust of the media, where one side throws out a river of garbage about something, and then they come back and say, well, look, we have to do something because people don't trust the media or they don't trust politics. Well, I mean, the Republicans under Biden lied for 4 years about political prosecutions. The Biden crime family, like there was one that is an actual, to me, like I don't like that, like the New York one where they push the limits, the statute of limits and that kind of stuff. That was really not great. That shouldn't have been done. All the rest of them are legitimate crimes that somebody should look into, independent prosecutors. It's nothing like, again, it's just such a different world. It's nothing like Trump sending a message accidentally in public saying, Pam Bondi, go prosecute these people, and firing prosecutors that don't do it. Like, there's just nothing like that on the other side. There's nothing anywhere like that. There's no prosecutors fired.
Sweetie, and this been going on in various ways. It's just gotten worse. It's a matter of degree.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I want in, because I'm not buying this, Jim.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why. To say, well, the guy who, knocks off a bank and gets $5 million, that's stealing. And then you say, well, this other guy stole the candy bar, that's stealing. Yes, they're both stealing, but the difference in magnitude is significant. And you cannot deny that what Trump does, there's simply no equivalent. And look, I hate Bill Clinton, hated Hillary Clinton, would never have supported him, couldn't stand Obama. They simply did not do anything equivalent to planning ahead of time to deny the results of an election.
Okay, let's keep this issue separate a little bit.
You can't. That's
issue,
the whole point.
At least
Jim,
on the
Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt, and I don't like to do that, but
no,
let me ask you one question on what you think about this. And is there any equivalent? Is there any equivalent in a prior administration of Donald Trump appointing his former personal attorneys throughout the justice system and them prosecuting people? And I'm talking about Todd Blanche, I'm talking about Pam Bondi, I'm talking about Lindsay Halligan, I'm talking about Alina Habba. That's 4 I can say off the top of my head. I can't think of I've not heard of a single one in the history of the Republic that is like that.
Well, it depends on what you mean, but John F. Kennedy appointed his little brother the Attorney General. And I can go further into history. For example, of Barack Obama sweepingly dismissed all the U.S. attorneys and had them replaced with people who were partisanly on his side. More than that, Barack Obama, in fact, Richard Nixon and Barack Obama used the Internal Revenue Service to do tax audits of their political opponents. So we've been creeping up to this, as I say, and that's the context I think a lot of people need to keep in mind. We've been creeping in this direction for many decades, for most of my life. And what Hillary did in the classified documents case was at least as bad. She wasn't president. The whole thing about classified documents is that the president is the one he's the one who can decide. Now, I don't think that Trump should be able to retroactively say, well, because I had it, I declassified it. But a president of the United States is the one who can declassify anything at any time he wants. And that's what the point I made about Senator Biden before he was even vice president had classified documents he ought not to have had. So we've been creeping up to this for a long, long time. As I say, it's much more a question of degree than kind. Even Trump in immigration cases is not completely ignoring due process. What is Abrego Garcia doing walking free right now? What is Mahmoud Khalil still here for? Why is he fighting things like birthright citizenship in the Supreme Court? And so far, he seems to be obeying court orders. But what he's doing is he's trying to press the law. And that is very common for presidents to do. Push the law in their direction and see how much they can get away with. But that's been going
Jim,
on.
you're dropping so much context that like it's hitting me over the head, the context.
I'm adding context. Jim.
No, you're destroying it. Because in the case, let's just go with the immigration stuff, right? Let's just start there. First of all, Trump, the language and the rhetoric that is behind the immigration policies is so much worse than anything that came from Obama, and it's relevant. When you start accusing Haitian immigrants of eating cats and dogs, right? When you are talking about everything out of your mouth is how the majority of these people, they're gang members, they're murderers, and you're labeling them that. It's so much worse, and it's always, and I don't think, I'm not going to say it's racist, but I can understand how some people would. When you're talking about heritage Americanism and blood and soil in the United States with, J.D. Vance. So that's your rhetoric. When Trump started and said he's going to go after only the serious criminals, but now we know that that's bullshit, and it's moving more and more towards your working people. When you're taking people and sending them to a foreign prison without due process. Now you would say, well, Abrego Garcia, but they didn't want to bring him back.
Yeah, the foreign prison thing is not a difference in degree, right? That's not sending people to El Salvador to be tortured and CCOT. Not for immigration. That's not
all deportations. Look, we've been deporting people to dictatorships that have been mistreating them for a long time, and that's really well, let me put it this way. The blame is certainly diffused in the sense that El Salvador, why are they holding the guy in their prison? I have to say that they're responsible.
They didn't. No, that's Jim. They did not send them to El Salvador and then El Salvador put them in the prison. The Trump administration arranged to send them to the prison in El Salvador. That's an important distinction.
You're saying El Salvador can't release them?
They said they couldn't. The guy said, no, we can't let them go. I mean, but
okay.
that was the arrangement. It's not like if we send someone to Yemen and the Yemen government grabs him as he comes off the plane and puts him in prison. That's terrible. That's not what happened here. This was an arrangement. These people are going to CCOT. They were sent to go to CCOT, right? Let's agree on that.
They're also
right?
not all El Salvadorians.
Yeah, they're not even from that country.
That's the thing. Again, none of this is really unprecedented. And it is up to when we deport someone, there's nothing Trump can do about whether
Jim, why are you trying to make it normal? I don't understand that.
Not saying
that was an arrangement. That was not they did not walk off the plane.
This is just not, he's so abnormal in so many directions.
I'm simply trying to add context.
Okay. Is what Trump is doing within the normal range of what our politicians have done? And the answer is no.
What your strongest point, Michael, was his rhetoric. Now, even Eisenhower called it Operation Wetback when he deported people. Now think about just the name of it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the time of Jim Crow so that we can find somebody that used similar rhetoric.
There has never been a time when morality and law in the United States have aligned. Let's get that on the table too. I think it's very easy to get sucked into emotionalism when in fact, if they're getting emotional and their rhetoric is going over the top, it calls on us to be all the more scrupulous about our understanding of the context, the wider context.
Sure.
Do I like the current immigration laws? I hate them.
Jim, you can't do that. You just can't logically just say, oh, the current immigration. You have to look at everything this guy has done, starting with not accepting the results of a legitimate election.
Okay, that's wrong.
But that's all part of it. You can't just take and say, oh, well, look, you can compare his immigration to Obama.
We have been moving in an authoritarian direction. Both sides step by inexorable.
But nobody's denying that. But there's still a significant break when it came to Trump.
But no one is identifying the real problem here. The real problem here is that for example, current immigration law actually lets them get away with much of this garbage.
I mean, I think in the long term that Jim is right in a sense that a lot of this stuff, the stage was set, and no president has been brave enough to actually use those powers that were lying there ready to be picked up and abused. And that's a problem with the system that we need to think about. But we still need to, like, there's just a basic factual thing I want to go back to here again, which is the CCOT thing. These were not prisoners that were sent to El Salvador that they could wander the street and then the government said, okay, they're coming off the plane, let's take them to CCOT. There was an arrangement between the Trump administration and the Bukele administration. These prisoners will go from the US to CCOT. That is a different thing that has not happened before outside people being rendered in terrorism cases where they're being sent to Guantanamo, or something like that, right? That's a different thing. It's not the same as somebody being deported to, I don't know, Somalia or wherever, and the government kills them. I mean, it's a different thing. There was an arrangement between our government and a foreign government to put these people in a prison in that country, right? That's a different thing that has not happened before.
We have worked with dictatorships to let them get away with the crap they do in dictatorships and turn the other way for, again, that.
Yeah. But again, that's a different thing. Like if I send somebody to East Germany and I know that they're going to get grabbed by the Stasi, okay, that's horrific.
We didn't do
right?
that, fortunately.
We might have during the Cold War. You don't know, right? But this is just a different thing. This is an explicit. This is like the Trump administration said. This is the arrangement. This is, it's. I cannot get past that. That is just a factually different thing. And I mean, we also should go into the whole people on the streets in mass grabbing people, but that's completely different.
Well,
Hold on. I want to let me in for a second here.
Yeah.
Because Jim, I agree with you that the constitutional erosions that have taken place have led to this point. I'm not disagreeing with that. But when Barack Obama was violating the Constitution, I said, this guy's violating the Constitution. I didn't have enmity of conservatives coming to me and say, yeah, but you have to understand that this has been coming for a long time. That's what's no, you didn't. You didn't have that.
All I'm asking to do is for people to get their focus on what needs to be focused on. The corruption of our system. And that is the problem. And that transcends any individual.
Sure, Jim, that's true. It
this
does.
Guy, a narcissistic little 3-year-old baby who's more concerned about his ego than anything else, does he give I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. Just consider that letter to the Norwegian Prime Minister. The guy is
also unprecedented.
The guy, well, I've never that's why
I mean, right there. That's the whole problem. And then he threatens to invade Greenland. It's not just one thing. It's an abundance of things that he does that have, and then there's also this, Jim. He lies constantly. And not only does he lie, but he has millions that defend the lies and say, no, this is actually the truth. What is it? 30-40% of Republicans still think the 2020 election was fixed?
Oh, it's way higher than that. I think it's like 60% of Republicans.
Is it?
It's way higher than that. It's ridiculous.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
The thing to ask AI, as of the latest polls, what percentage of Republicans are still in the cult of Trump to that degree?
And, I mean, Michael, that is something that, I said in chat that you said you might want me to discuss that. I don't think that you can honestly hold that opinion in 2025. If you have that opinion, you are not being honest. I could make that argument if you want, but
I have long said that the 2020 election was not stolen and that Joe Biden won that election, that they were, and in misleading people. I mean, it's one thing to incite the actual riot at 2026. But an implicit incitement is, I won. This was a stolen election. Constitutional rules should be suspended when there's a fraudulent election. Okay, that by itself is incitement, it seems to me.
About 65-70% of Republicans believe the election was stolen.
Wow.
It's insane. That is an insane number.
Yeah.
And Jenna Clean wants to know how we fix it. And we got a super sticker also from Gary Menard. But to me, see, when I'm criticizing Trump, I'm not just criticizing Trump. It's the entire movement, the information ecosystems that are around him. It's all a problem that we have not seen. We've seen, with Obama mania, a similar dynamic, but none of it has all coalesced to come around what we have with Trump. Now, Ian, you can make your case for why you don't think an honest person can believe that. The problem is you're going to put me in a position that's going to come off like I'm defending Trump supporters, because it's simply.
Well, Michael, there you are defending.
No, and I mean I will, but it's not a defense.
Look, Trump.
So Mr. Deagle, this is the type of thing that I'm talking about. Mr. Deagle says. Mike said they are honest because they don't know the information, but refusing to look is where their dishonesty lies. That's not necessarily dishonest. That's the problem, is when you're talking about dishonesty. Dishonesty means intentionally misrepresenting facts, intentionally saying something one knows to not be true. And to judge another person's mind and say there's no way this person can believe this when I don't know that person's entire context, I don't know their intellectual capability, I don't know what they've looked at, what they haven't looked at, I don't know their character history. I seriously can't just say, oh yes, it's impossible for this person to believe that.
I think your statement about honesty is a little bit off in that. If someone refuses to look at something, they can't then say, well, I honestly didn't know.
Right? I have to agree with you.
Do you look at Newsmax?
I'm not refusing to look at Newsmax. I mean, so I have done a lot of election fraud debunking stuff. And back in the day, people send me articles from the Epoch Times, Newsmax.
Okay.
I will look at those. I will look at those arguments and address them.
It's painful.
Exactly.
Me too. But here's the thing.
It hurts my brain. I lose brain cells.
But here's the problem. Would there be a legitimate reason to doubt what's in Newsmax?
Yes, and I have legitimate reason to disbelieve most of the left-wing media.
Okay, but that is precisely my point. So if you have somebody that has judged based on the evidence that nothing coming out of the left-wing media can be trusted, I disagree. But I can see that somebody can honestly come to that perspective.
But the point is, I'm not closing my eyes to either side. I believe there's dishonesty. Judging a single person for dishonesty is one thing, Michael. But Ian makes a really great point. If I'm going to make that a premise of my logic, and if I'm going to make a public position on it, then I have a responsibility to take into account the available information. And that means I can't evade.
I don't disagree with that, Jim. Okay. What I'm saying is the question was put to me, is it possible for a person to honestly believe that the 2020 election was stolen?
And there I agree with you. It is.
And I have to say it is. Do I think it's likely? Do I think it's rational? Do I think that it's sound thinking? No. But can it be done honestly? Yes.
But if you're going to come out with a public position, or if you're going to let it be a premise of your logic, then you have a moral responsibility to attend to the facts and not blur out inconvenient information. Yeah. So in that sense, I agree with Ian.
I agree too. But what I'm saying is that they honestly discount that information. They can be honest and say, I'm not going to trust that information.
If you are living on an island and you're reading whatever you choose to read, and let's go to a scenario, you can come to the conclusion that, okay, I read Newsmax and this is what I find. But if you exist in the world where you interact with other people, and because all these people at some point in their life, someone has said to them, they said, oh, that election was stolen. And someone said, oh, no, it's not. You should look at this. Did they look at that? They did not.
Well, okay, first of all, we don't know that.
You can create scenarios, but I mean,
but we don't. But we have to create scenarios because you're giving a hypothetical.
I'm talking about people like public intellectuals. I used Andy Bernstein. I don't know what he believes today, but if you're at his level, if you have to be having a public point of view, you have to be willing to do the work.
But Ian, you don't know that they haven't taken the look. That's part of your hypothesis, but you don't know that. And somebody can look and just not believe it.
I think in 2020, in 2025, and here's another problem with your thesis. Your thesis is that, okay, they're just getting all the left-wing stuff or the mainstream media or whatever. If you look, and people, there's obvious examples, there are conservative think tanks that have done studies and said there is no basis for the election fraud. So it's not just the left-wing media. You have to throw out anything that disagrees.
Ian, the logic.
And at some point that becomes dishonest.
Ian, I agree with your logic. The problem I have is I have had an abundance of experience arguing with conspiracy theorists, for instance. And what ends up happening is any evidence that you present them is discounted because they already have.
That is not honest.
See, but
what you just said is not
dishonest.
honest.
It's not because you're saying that dishonesty implies they know, Ian.
Right. See what they've
but they're refusing to look. Refusing to look is also dishonest.
But no, because I know conspiracy theorists that will look, but when they look, they just discount the evidence. They say, "No, I don't believe it."
Have there been corrupt elections in American history? Are there shenanigans that take place in Chicago? Legendary. I mean, when I went to law school, some 30, almost 40 years, geez, I'm aging myself, more than 30 years ago, Chicago was a joke. Everyone knew it was corrupt and the elections there could be swung. Everyone knows that there's shenanigans that happen in elections in Philadelphia, Detroit, Las Vegas. And so what they do is they take this little seed of truth and then they say that made the difference to the election, which is the question at hand. And so that's what confuses the issue of whether their position is honest or not, because people can say, well, there was election irregularities in Philadelphia and Chicago and Detroit and Las Vegas. Okay, but did those election irregularities make the difference in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Nevada, which lost Trump the 2020 election? Answer, no. Answer, they could not have. Answer, it could not have been that to that degree. Now, that's a very subtle judgment to make, as opposed to saying, okay, I have no evidence that there was these was a 100% purest no election. If you may take that position, then of course they're going to say, oh, no, wait a minute. There were election irregularities. The election observers were kicked out, et cetera, et cetera. The question before the court is, did that make any difference? And so when we're talking about a factual context like that, I have to agree with Michael. In that sense, people don't, think through what the real issues are. And they'll take some, even a demonstrated little piece of election shenanigans and say, oh, that means Trump won the election.
Right.
That does not follow.
So I just want to say, first of all, I'm not making the argument that these people are honest. I don't know. The question that was posed was, is it possible? And what I do know is you've got news sources out there that put out that the election was stolen to this day. Lara Logan, who used to work for CBS News, is out there saying this. So if you are a person and you're looking at all of this stuff, it's possible to be mistaken that you believe these sources, not the other sources. And in the case when you're saying, well, the conservative think tank, but they've already got the religious excuse built in that those people are rhinos, they're sellouts. We don't believe those think tanks anymore. They're part of the establishment. Now, we can argue that that's all dishonest, but outside proof that they're being dishonest, you can't just assume and say, yes, there's a dishonest motive there, because there's just no way to know. It's possible that they can be mistaken, because every day on my feed on Twitter are claims that the election was stolen. New evidence has come out. This has come out. That's come out. Now, I happen to be the type of person that goes and fact checks everything, even when it agrees with me. But if I didn't do that, that doesn't mean I'm being dishonest. Maybe I just don't know how to assess sources. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that are coming in.
Right.
And when you're accusing somebody of dishonesty, I'm just not into there's especially in the objectivism world. Let me just put it blunt for you. There's a lot of people that anytime you disagree with them, it can't just be that you've come to a different conclusion. It has to be that you're evading, that you're engaging in rationalism, that you're lying. And it's just that there's other reasons. Now, I want to just, Robert Naser Says shameless self-promotion with the $20 super chat. Coming this Sunday afternoon, the Tao of Rand, 5 minutes with Robert and Amy Nasser. Ayn Rand's philosophy, objectivism as a source and system of wisdom, rationality for fun and profit, from the great Robert Nasser.
So my comeback, Michael, would be that maybe we can make a theoretical basis for your case. So I'll back down a little bit. But I have to say, in practical matters, because I have, like you, engaged with a lot of these people, and they are all dishonest. Like, I'm not saying all the future ones that I run into will be, but it is my supposition that nobody holds this honestly anymore.
How does it advance the debate? Start
you'll see
people of moral dishonesty. It does not.
I don't
think what
accuse
we need
them
to do is
at the
take
time.
away, even if they are, and in most cases, I can't read their mind. I don't know their context. I don't know what they view the sources as, Ian, and I don't think it helps the debate. What it does is it shuts down the debate to say, well, you're evil, you're evading, you're dishonest, you're a wicked, evil person. Does not help the discussion.
I would never say this in having a discussion with somebody. I would never say, oh, I think you're being dishonest or whatever. I would show them better sources. I would talk to them. And then at some point, if I think they're being dishonest, I would move on.
That's it.
You know,
when we come to the conclusion,
it's not part of the debate.
Stop the discussion.
Yeah, had you put the question to me, do I think the probability is that most people who make these claims think they're dishonest? I would say, do I think they're dishonest? I would say yes. But when you put it in such absolute terms, is it possible? That's where it alters the equation, because it is possible. I can envision an anonymity of scenarios where an honest person could end up thinking this way. I don't, for instance, I don't know how in 2026 somebody can believe in religion. I think there's far more evidence against Christianity than there is against the 2020 election being stolen. But millions of people believe it, and I don't think they're all dishonest.
That's a really, really good point. But when I hear self-described objectivists say Donald Trump is the greatest president in American history, then I wonder about their objectivist values, because what you're saying then is Thomas Jefferson wasn't the great ideologue of the founding, or Madison, or that George Washington's incredible moral heroism is somehow matched by Donald Trump's. That I find sacrilegious. And if you claim to be an objectivist and you say Donald Trump is George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, I mean, look, he's not even Grover Cleveland or Calvin Coolidge in my mind. But to compare him to the founding fathers is obscene. Now, the founding was not a perfect. The Constitution, as we've indicated, is by no means a perfect document. On the other hand, the stride that the American Revolution made towards secular government, rational, scientific government, was unprecedented in human history. It's a heroic achievement of the highest order. Washington retiring from being a general and retiring from being a president was the essence of, in effect, his moral heroism. We did a revolution, we got George Washington. The French do a revolution, they get Napoleon Bonaparte. So if people compare Donald Trump to the founding fathers and Donald Trump comes out ahead, then I really start wondering about their, quote, objectivism. Because that's just a moral value issue that should be obvious on the face of it to anyone who's looked into it at all. Now, if we're getting down and dirty and we roll up our sleeves and say, well, what sources, media sources, do you agree? And were there shenanigans and the shenanigans reach the level of? Well, there I think we have to give a lot of leeway to personal context. And it doesn't help the debate to start saying, well, you're evil. No, you're evil. You're the objectivist. No, not you're not an objectivist. No, you're not the objectivist. It gets us nowhere. My take.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting ready to move because I have to drop off for a work meeting. But, thanks for having me on.
You're a smart guy, Ian.
Okay, so Gary Menard said, what is the point when presenting a rational election denier with facts and he or she ignores them? Can they deem to be evading? The problem, I think, that what maybe I'm not getting across is you're saying you're going to present them with facts. If the person does not believe your source, then you have a problem. And the problem is, for me, that I think that the accusations of left-wingism and the media is always lying are way overblown. I do think the media has a left-wing bias and has earned people to not trust them. So then you have to ask, well, to what degree are you going to go in that distrust? And if somebody goes to the degree where they just discount all of that, they just say, I'm just not going to believe it. I could see if I knew a person in my life that just lied constantly, and I grew up with Ian left.
Oh,
And I grew up with somebody who, thank you, Ian, for being here.
yeah,
And
you.
I went to, I grew up with a kid who lies constantly. I simply don't believe anything he says. Right now, he might tell the truth, but I'm still not going to believe him because he's taught me I can't trust him.
Yeah.
What if they don't trust the facts of reality, Michael? This is the inherent problem. Is we're conflating terms here. We're conflating sound thinking or unsound thinking with dishonesty. The question posed to me wasn't, would it be rational for a person to think the 2020 election was stolen? The question wasn't is there enough evidence that it wasn't stolen? Yes. The question was, is it possible for a person to believe it and not be dishonest?
Right.
We cannot smuggle all types of other things into the equation. It's a simple question of honesty, which requires intent. And I'm simply saying that it is possible. And by the way, if you think it's not possible, then let's just shut up about it. Because what is the point? If the person's dishonest, you can't sway them.
Right.
So why bother? Let's all just shut up and go on about our business. The reason that I'll continue to talk about it is because I think there are honest people out there who are just wrong.
Yeah. And I just, it sounds, because objectivists are taught to judge. Ayn Rand said, don't fail to morally judge. But that does not obviate the need to be rational in our moral judgments. And it does not obviate the reality that in most cases, we're not in a position to morally judge why a person came to their beliefs or not. Could it be evasion? Absolutely. And in which case, it's dishonest. But until and unless I have clear evidence, now there are outlying limits. If someone's a Holocaust denier, someone's an overt, an academic communist who's defending the Soviet Union and denying the numbers there. Okay, that's dishonest. If you take a public position, if you're an academic and you're saying something that absurd, flat earth society, let's say, I just won't even pay attention. I dismiss them out of hand. And I do know there's something dishonest going on. But within rather extreme limits, frankly, it doesn't help the case. And I really can't judge the case of their intellectual honesty. And, if I were to give the capitalist thought of the day here, I would say far more important than any single political issue is our commitment to reason, is our commitment to sticking by observation and logic. That and that alone is the human means of knowing reality. And if we are going to be defenders of individual rights, personal freedom, the right to, live your own life, what we have to do is recognize that reason and only reason can be a tool for our own determination of what the truth is and for persuading others. And if we can just take the moralism, if I can put it that way, down a few notches, we will be far more effective. We will show them that, in fact, point out the facts, make them cite the sources, make a careful logical argument. If we start out with "you're evil," we've lost any hope of convincing that person because they're going to click us off just like that.
Well, that's the capitalist thought for the day. Thank you very much, James.
Okay.
So we are running out of time rapidly. So my question, and I hope you will all go to YouTube and please answer the question, is: did you enjoy setting the super chat goal this week and the prize of having somebody on the program? Please go to YouTube and answer that. Jim, tell everyone where they can find you.
On The Rational Egoist, the latest episode, I think, was one of our very best ever of all time, Michael, and we've had some pretty awesome conversations. But go check out The Rational Egoist, where we talk about reason and self-improvement. Michael and I were at our very best, and I'm also at the Ayn Rand Center UK doing stuff all the time. I'm also active almost every day on Facebook. James Valiant, hit me up with a question over there if you got one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. We will see you Monday. Remember, Tuesday I'm off, but until Monday, be rational. What the hell? No, check your premises.
Check the premises.
Peace.